You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans that just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into the national sports media talking points and all the nonsense. We're sticking to football, and we're diving into the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down games during the season. It's almost here. And sorting through all the drama and the rumors of the offseason, which we are still just barely in. If y'all want to support this podcast, please spike that like button for us. Give us a follow on all those socials and subscribe to that Packers Talk YouTube channel. All those things help us out tremendously. So thank you to all the listeners and subscribers. And before we get started, a few words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can get them, or you can find them on the web at TicketKing.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to PackersTalk.com/tickets or browse their website at TheTicketKing.com. Good evening, Tim. How you doing, sir?
Good evening, Miles. I'm doing really well. It is less than a week away until training camp starts, so actual real football. The off season is almost over. I think it actually went kind of went fast. There's no drama, really. Very, very little drama for a change, which is awesome. And here we are. Training camp is about to get started.
Love it. That's actually why we did the podcast on Tuesday night this week, right? Instead of Monday night. So we could say that it's less than a week away.
Less than a week. Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, it sounds way better than a week away.
Right. Yeah, it's another day closer.
Exactly. Yeah, and, you know, we're not technically done with the offseason yet, and there are still, I don't know if we want to call them rumors. I don't know how we want to describe what swirled around the Twitterverse earlier today as a result of a local Jordan Love interview. But the mood is positive. The mood is good. It feels like a deal is imminent. Right? Is that what you took from it?
That's what I'm taking. And just, in case you haven't seen it yet, just set the stage for everyone.
For sure.
Jordan Love was had a football camp, and a reporter asked him, I think they were told ahead of time, don't ask about the contract, but a reporter decided to ask anyway, which is, hey, doing their job.
Right on.
And right away, somebody off to the side, I guess, whoever was controlling the interview was saying, no contract talk. But Jordan Love was smiling, and I think he said something like news is coming or something like that. And he looked really happy and was smiling about it.
It was a big smile.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those, I think we've seen in the past, whether it's with Packer players or other players, like if it's not going well, they're not going to be able to hide it. It might have been one of those, I don't want to talk about it sort of things. And why are you asking me that? But he was laughing. He was quite happy. He was smiling. He was trying to hold back a smile. Maybe it means nothing, but it seemed to mean something. And Mark Murphy got asked about it because he spoke a little bit today because the Packers came out with all their financial information ahead of the shareholders meeting. And, Mark Murphy sometimes will say too much and where they don't want him saying things. And this was a situation where he didn't really say anything. And maybe that meant nothing. Maybe he's just trying to control himself, whatever. But he definitely held back, and he said he's leaving that kind of stuff up to Russ Ball. So I don't know. I mean,
we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, I think there might be something there. I think maybe they're close and they just want to get it across the finish line, but it's close. But maybe not. But it, trying to read between the lines and figure out what, body language. I don't know. It seemed positive to me. I don't know what your take is, or if you're worried about, the contract getting done anytime soon.
Well, a couple things. First of all, with Murphy, that's the obvious go-to, right? Like, hey, if there's, a leaky spot, let's go there. Let's see if we can find
Yeah.
something over there, but I think Mark Murphy's probably learned his lesson a little bit over the last few years when he has slipped a little bit more than he should. So they might have even briefed him like, "Hey, Mark, they're coming for you, man. They know that you're liable to let something loose."
Right.
So he was probably prepared for that, and I would expect the front office to maintain a poker face until the deal is done. You maintain a poker face. That seems like the responsible negotiation thing to do. So as far as their response goes, doesn't mean as much to me as Jordan Love being asked about it and not being able to visibly contain his just the look on his face. I mean, when you ask somebody about something that they're particularly excited about, there is a different level of glow or smile or however you want to describe it. And anybody that watched that interview and saw him be asked that question, he could not contain it. So I think they probably have agreed on the important things, to the point where Jordan Love can be like, "Look, I'm pumped. Let's do this, and y'all take care of the T's and the I's, right?" But that's for me, that looked like a deal's coming. And if there's any level of strategic thought about when you release the news, say everything's agreed on, done deal. When do we want to tell everybody? The day before camp. That to me seems the most logical. You're going to get the most pop out of that, and you're so close already. So I would expect it probably the day before camp.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I know Goody had gone on the radio a few weeks ago and said he was hoping to have it done before training camp started. So, I'm not surprised that it's going to go right down to the wire, it looks like. But if they could get it done the day before, it's not only the day before the training camp, they're also doing a shareholders meeting the same day as the first day of training camp. So it's something you can like, hey, look at it. It's a lot of news to bring out there, and it's a really good start to training camp for the Packers from a business standpoint and a public relations standpoint too. So
Absolutely.
that makes sense. And if for some reason it's not done before the start of camp, I'm really not that worried about it. I mean, I think if we get to the regular season and it's not done, then I'm going to kind of say like, okay, what's going on? Is this going to affect things going forward with the relationship between Jordan Love and the organization? But as far as whether it's done tomorrow or, first day of camp, day before camp, whatever it may be, that's fine, and I hope it gets done. And if it takes some time into August or something like that, I think that's okay too. Just be patient with it. But seeing what Jordan Love's reaction was today and what Mark Murphy said, it seems like they're close.
Yeah, no doubt. It definitely seems like they're close. And kind of to your point, Tim, about if it's not close, if there's not even like an imminent deal, maybe it's not in a bad place, it's just not in any place at all. Kind of like where Davante Adams was a few years ago. You're going to get that like, look, I'm coming to, with business, like, coming to do my job, coming to live up my contract. You're going to get very limited language. Certainly not going to be visibly excited. So I think that, if it was in a different place, it'd be a lot easier for Jordan Love to answer that question and be like, they're all taking care of it. It's not really my thing. It'll get done, but the uncontrollable response that he had is just like, he let it go, guys. It's coming. It's coming.
Right.
That's how I felt about it, but not a bad, we don't get to break the extension news, but if we're going to talk about a training camp preview for the offense, which is what this episode is, that's kind of at least a fun way, to get something, fresh to talk about, as far as related to Jordan Love. It's not the extension. It's kind of the next best thing where it's like, hey, I think it's coming, Yeah. So we'll see. But, let's jump into it, man. Let's get into our training camp preview for the offense. We did last week. We did the defense. There's certainly a lot more question marks around the defense. A few more things for us to explore. Will it be this? Will it be that? Who is this? Who is that? For me, the offense is in a much different place. And that, well, obviously, man, they've all been together for at least a year. They got the offensive coordinator and LaFleur, and everything's pretty consistent there. So yeah, they're very obviously in a different place. But what I mean by that is, it's not because the players aren't experienced. It's just because you don't know what to expect from the system, and more so from the system on game day, not necessarily the system on the whiteboard. I think when it comes to the knowledge part of the system, you've got enough, what we talked about on the defense, enough mature guys, veteran guys, that you're not going to bring some system in that's just going to be so hard for them to adapt to. And if you are, you've done that wrong. You've failed. If you've gone that direction from Joe Barry, we went the wrong way. But yeah, you've got the guys there. It's just a matter of, what does the system look like? How does Hafley call it on game day? Where do a few positions shake out? For the offense, it's an evolution. Right now, you're not talking about any new bodies. I mean, on the offensive line, there's a couple, obviously there's potential for, a few bodies in there. Outside of that, we're not talking about new bodies at receiver. We're not talking about new bodies at tight end. We are talking about, a couple new bodies at running back.
Right.
But in a way, you're almost not, because I don't think what they are going to ask Josh Jacobs to do is going to be very different from what they asked Aaron Jones to do. And maybe I even said that in the wrong order. I don't think, listen, when you have an Aaron Jones, you build the offense around him in a certain way. And when you lose an Aaron Jones, you cannot assume that you're going to be able to replace that skill set and ask the next guy to do the same things. You put Josh Jacobs in there, now I think you can. I think that they're similar enough players. Aaron Jones a little smaller, a little quicker, but I don't think that there's anything he did that you can't ask Josh Jacobs to do. Now, there may be a few things Josh Jacobs is not as good at or is better at, whatever. We'll figure all that out. We'll see it play out. But the point being, in the playbook for the coaches, as far as the offense and its evolution, strategically, you don't have to take a step backwards at the running back position, for what you're asking them to do. If anything, I think you can take a step forward, because your running back 2 is the same guy, at least, in the classroom. A.J. Dillon in the classroom, you're not losing anything, obviously, because he's been there. And then, obviously, you get Marshawn Lloyd, rookie. He looks like he's got a great skill set, but what a great situation for a rookie to walk into. You got one guy here who's trusted, who's been here. You got another guy who's new, but he's also one of the best in the league, and you get to learn from both of them. That's a zero pressure situation for Marshawn Lloyd, and I think we're going to get to see him flourish because of that. When you get to see these guys play without having to worry about things like overthinking, making mistakes and stuff like that, they can play better, right? I don't know how much better, but you get to see a better version of that athlete. So I mean, I kind of jumped in quick there. I don't want to take off running, but I started here with the running backs. I think that was maybe a decent place to start. But what do you think, Tim, so far?
Yeah, I mean, for just the running back position, I agree with what you're saying. I don't think there's a drop off from Aaron Jones to Josh Jacobs. Yes, they're a different type of running backs for sure. But I think with Josh Jacobs, you get more durability, you get more size. He's not as quick. He's he's not I still think he's a home run threat. I just think he's a different type of home run threat than Aaron Jones. And he's not as advanced in the passing game yet, like Aaron Jones was. But I just think that's opportunity that they didn't give him with the Raiders. I think the potential's there. And just the durability factor. Like, I love Aaron Jones. I love what he did on and off the field. But you could see it even before last season. They were always hesitant to feed him game after game just because of his size and because he, had a tendency to get nicked up here and there. And then we saw it last year with the hamstring injury throughout the season. Then when he did, finally get healthy late in the year, he was a beast. I think with Josh Jacobs, he's proven that he's a bigger, stronger back. He's a more durable back. He can be your number one guy. Not that they're going to give him 25 carries a game. I just don't think that's their way of doing it. But I think they can lean on him a little bit more if they need to, and they probably will at some point. But if they need to, they can lean on him more and give him the ball more than they could get out of Aaron Jones. And then, having Dylan there, coming off a disappointing year, but I expect him to rebound a little bit. I think people that are saying he could get cut, yeah, it's a possibility, but I think you're writing him off a little bit too soon. And I really like the potential of Marshawn Lloyd. I think at some point during this upcoming season, Marshawn Lloyd will eventually probably become the number 2 guy on his way to kind of being a 1B back in the future behind the 1A back in Jacobs. They're a much deeper running back room than they were last year. I think they're a better running back room. No offense to Aaron Jones. I love the guy, but I think Jacobs has the potential to be an upgrade over Aaron Jones. And then when you talk about hopefully an improved season from A.J. Dillon, and I think Marshawn Lloyd, he's one of those sneaky, draft picks. I don't know if he's going to have the stats from day one, but I think as the season goes on, he'll be more of a factor. And I think down the road, that's going to be a really nice draft. That's going to be a really nice pick for them. I like him a lot. So yeah, it's a deeper position. It's different. But I think different in this case is going to end up being good.
No, I totally agree. That's where what I was saying is like what you can ask him to do doesn't have to be different, but what he does certainly can be expected to be different. So yeah, I'm excited from that standpoint, and it's interesting how the game has evolved because I guess I can say I'm old enough to remember when if you had just like one of the best running backs in the league, you were a threat, right? Like that was going to be a good offense. Now you got to have the full package, and that's what excites me the most about this offense going into training camp is it seems like they do, or at least they have the ability to have the full package. Quick comments here. We got Matthew Tan jumping back in with us. Good to see you, man. Says he's ready for the season and understands we had tasks to complete yesterday. It's okay. Yes, that is my fault. I am, if you'll notice the lack of the normal Packers talk or Packers Weekly background there. I'm on vacation up here in up north Wisconsin here. The North Woods at, Little Kelly Lake. If you guys, any listeners are familiar with this tiny little lake here in the middle of nowhere, it is beautiful. So apologies yesterday. We had some family stuff going on and just, when that's going on, you can't stop it. So it is what it is, but here we are tonight. We're back with you. But yeah, so getting back into the rest of the offense though, like I was saying, you don't have new bodies to talk about, especially at the receiver position. That's one that I think everybody's excited about. It's funny because every year there's what Packers Twitter knows about the team and what the rest of the NFL seems to understand about the team. And usually Packers Twitter's a little bit ahead of the curve. Sometimes we're wrong. But in this case, we've been way far ahead of the rest of the sports world on the Packers receivers, rightfully so. Most of them aren't paying attention until somebody pops off in fantasy. But now we're all sitting here like, it's like one of those memes where we can't hold it in anymore. Like we're like, guys, this is probably one of the best receiving cores in the league. I can't keep it anymore. I can't contain myself. I can't contain the excitement. Call it an overreaction. Say I'm wrong. Say I'm crazy. Whatever it is. But most of you that are listening to this show, you already know. Receiver 1 through 4 is locked down. We're not talking about receivers 1 through 4. Assuming injuries don't happen, you're not talking about who's taking those spots. Those spots are taken, and you can order them however you'd like, but we all know who they are. Receiver 5 and 6 is insanely competitive, more competitive than I can remember since 2011. Obviously, you got Bo Melton there and Malik Heath. Very different guys, right? So it's not, you have two different skill sets, and I think that's what gives them both a really good chance to continue to be on this roster, assuming then that the Packers take six receivers. How they do that, we'll get there. I don't know. We'll think about it. But Malik Heath is your bully, and Bo Melton is another burner, and last year in the playoffs and at the end of the season, he reminded you he cannot be ignored either, right? So what his ceiling is, who knows? Does he crack that top 4 somehow? I can't predict that from this side of training camp. I don't think that that's a reasonable thing to predict. Could it happen? Sure. Funky stuff happens. But yeah, I mean, that position group itself is a very exciting one. It's interesting that you didn't even, you didn't add a body in the offseason. You didn't need to. You didn't even really need to think about it. You've got the cheapest receiver room, and you've got the most productive receiver room for the money by like a long shot.
Yeah.
So, that's probably the group I'm the most excited about on this offense. Obviously, it's really easy to be excited about Jordan Love and even really the whole quarterback room. So there's a case to be made for that, case to be made for the tight end group, case to be made for some of the offensive line. But I'm the most excited about the receivers. The upside for 1 through 6 is pretty crazy. Like obviously 1 through 4, like we said, Watson, Dobbs, Reed, and Wicks, all of them have receiver 1 ceilings. I think that's a fair thing to say. We won't say they're all receiver 1s right now. That's kind of the fun argument, right? Oh, who's the receiver 1? You don't have one. Do you need one? Who knows? All of them have receiver 1 ceilings. I don't think that there's any debate about that at this point. And if you want to debate about it, jump in the comments. We'd love to have you. There's bound to be a rogue Bears fan out there. But after that, even Bo Melton and Malik Heath, not that I'm saying they have receiver 1 potential, but both of them probably have receiver 2, 3 potential. So it's such a high potential group, and you have the right offensive minds in the room. With LaFleur, and I'll even give Stinovich some due for just being part of the package. Right? He's a mind in the room. Who knows what he's contributing? If it's a lot, if it's a little, he's there. He's not screwing it up. We'll say that. So you've got all the right ingredients for a really, really beautiful receiver storm there. And so I'm most excited about the receiver room. I don't know. Is there anything that can be said there, Tim, about the receiver room that I didn't cover?
No, I think you covered it. It's really deep. It's really young and athletic and very exciting. And we haven't seen the best of any of these guys yet, whether that's because of Watson's injuries or just, them being rookies and developing players. There's been a ton of debate about it all off season, and I don't think this is the time to get into what we've talked about in the past, but whether they have a wide receiver 1, whether they need to have a wide receiver 1 or not, they have at least 4 or 5 guys that you can be confident in to get the job done, that you can spread the ball around and be in the offense. And there's very few teams in the NFL that can say that. Now, does that make them any better than teams that have a number 1 receiver or not? Time will tell. I also think like you said, there's potential for these guys to be number 1 receivers, the wide receiver 1, that everybody wants to talk about. We forget that some of these guys were rookies last year, or they were second-year players. Like, it takes time to build up to that. Not everybody comes out of college and is a wide receiver 1 right away. So let them develop and see what they have. But yeah, it's an incredibly exciting position that they are in at receiver. The way they have turned that room over the last 2 years
it's a master
crazy
class.
to think.
If you want to be a GM in the NFL, you better study that.
Yeah, and I mean, they've got, obviously there's luck involved in that. You got to hit on these guys.
Fair, yeah.
There's a lot, but they had a plan when they moved on for Davante Adams, and it took some time. But so far, you're seeing the potential of how good it could be, and it's really exciting. And you mentioned 4 guys are locks. I think Bo Melton has a really good chance. Malik Heath. I mean, even if you go down the line to like Samori Toure, I think he's a long shot, but they've liked him enough to keep him on the roster for 2 years. Grant DuBose was a draft pick last year who spent the year on the practice squad. Like, there's some guys there that where, maybe they don't make the 53, but they're on the practice squad to give you that depth as well. So, the receiver room it's incredibly exciting and has the potential to be one of the best in the NFL. I know a lot of it's unknown right now because it's younger players who don't have a ton of experience or guys coming off injury. But I mean, the potential's through the roof. And all of those guys are bona fide NFL wide receivers. So
no doubt.
I can't wait to see how they all hopefully take the next step and then how that competition shakes out for playing time.
Absolutely. No, that I think is what's going to be the most interesting is how does the playing time shake out? How do you feed all the dogs, man? And dogs being a positive term, just because we have to be clear about those things sometimes. How do you feed everybody? Because you got a lot of mouths to feed, man. And we're just not even in the receiver room. We got some hungry tight ends too, right?
They're getting overlooked this offseason.
They are. I'm cool with that. Good. Overlook away, because
they're just as
they're going to be dangerous.
But I mean, we talk about the potential and how good the receivers could be. Like Musgrave and Kraft are really. I mean, the flashes we saw from both of them as rookies. Wow, like they have two tight end ones. Two of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not there yet, but the potential is all there, and we've seen the flashes. We've seen that they can do it in the NFL. Like, now, can they do it consistently? Can they grow in their second year? And I feel like they're getting overlooked because everybody wants to debate, the receiver position and if there's a wide receiver one or not. Like, they might have two tight end ones. So,
well, they might have the best tight end tandem in the league. I mean, really, you really have. That's not hyperbole. That's not exaggeration. Like that. These guys are good. They're really good. So,
really.
And I don't even want to jump there too quickly, because I did also want to say something else that came out today, not necessarily related to the Packers, but, they're in every conversation, right? So, Brandon Ayuk officially demands a trade. There's certainly the shiny object syndrome, right? Like, he's a really good receiver, guys. Should we think about trying to make? No, absolutely not. No. Big time no. 100% no.
So it makes no sense.
No.
If the 49ers really were going to trade him, they would have traded him in March or April when they could have got draft picks or players then to set up their roster now. They're not trading him now, even if he asks for it. And even if he asks for it, the Packers aren't going to be interested, because you trade for him, whatever the compensation is, which is going to be a lot, then you got to turn around and pay him $25 to $30 million a year.
There it is.
They're not going to do that. Why would you do that when you have this cheap receiver room that they're all in their first contracts? And yes,
and the other part of that, you can't tell me. We'll limit it to 1 through 4. I'd hear arguments outside of that. You can't tell me 1 through 4 doesn't have a potential ceiling as high or higher than Brandon Ayuk.
fair.
Any one of them could be as good as him or better.
Yeah,
Fair?
and I think I think the argument right now, like why some people may be like, and I haven't, to Packer fans' credits, I haven't seen them jumping all over this like they do with everybody else that becomes available.
Yeah.
So maybe they've learned, but he's better than all of our guys right now. But to your point, they have the potential to be just as good,
and you don't have to pay any of them until next season at the earliest.
Right. Like Christian Watson can be just as good. He can be better than Brandon Ayuk, and we can get
Dobbs. Don't put it past him to be just as good or better.
Maybe. And I think Jaden Reed, different type of receiver, but I think Jaden Reed, the way they use him and the kind of receiver he is, like
very explosive.
It's just the value that they get out of these guys and how good they can be. There's no reason to blow up your entire cap structure and blow up the receiver room by doing that and then paying. No, that's fantasy football stuff.
And just for anybody who's maybe you're not paying as close attention to the contract situations and all of that. Oh, don't they have the money? Like their financials came out today. Oh, they've got hundreds of millions of dollars, don't they? Couldn't they? Well, so with the salary cap, you have to strategically maneuver that. And the popular thing for fans, what a lot of us have been able to observe, I'll say, and have kind of clung to, is the rookie quarterback contract, right? If you can get one of those rookie quarterback contracts and a good rookie quarterback and then build around them, you can build a super team for a couple years. In theory, maybe, kind of. It's happened. What the Packers are doing right now is effectively the same thing. I think the cap on the receivers this season is what, like $11 million or something, just insanely, absurdly low.
Very low. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, you have some dead money out there, and yeah, you're already paying Jordan Love I think 22 or something this year. Isn't this part of his first extension? You're paying him something, and you're about to pay him a lot.
Right.
What you're getting, the receivers that you have for the price is effectively a rookie quarterback contract, like with a stud rookie quarterback, with Jordan Love as your quarterback, right? Like that's your production. So that's, where you're at. This is not a conversation about is Brandon Ayuk worth the money, right? You can make the argument one way or the other. I think there's arguments to be made. Personally, the argument that I make is show me the last Super Bowl winning team that you give the credit to receiver one, or at least some of it. Maybe Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs. Hard to take that away from Pat Mahomes, because now that he's done it 2 in a row without Tyreek Hill. But before that, it's Jerry Rice. Like, there's just not a Super Bowl winner out there where you're like, yeah, it's because they had Calvin Johnson, or it's because they had Randy Moss, or it's because they had Terrell Owens. None of them. None of them. As dominant as they were, as much as we love to talk about these guys as the GOATs, they're in that conversation, right? They didn't win Super Bowls. And that's where I'm like, look, it can be fun to think about having a dominant player, but when you are getting the production you're getting for the price you're getting it for, you don't screw that up. Don't mess that up. And it only gets better next year without the price increasing. And I can see you're chomping at the bit, Tim. I do want to give some.
You're good.
I want to give some space to the comments here. We got Clint Stoner joining us. He says, I haven't been this excited to watch the Packers offense ever. I'm smelling a lot of games over 30 points. Go Pack Go. Love to have you here, Clint. Glad you're joining us, sir. And says a healthy Watson is better. I think we've got a healthy Watson. We're going to find out. Rev Trev jumping in with us says, pay your stars, but they better produce and hopefully they stay healthy. That's the thing. That's why you don't go get Brandon Ayuk. That's why you don't go and pay somebody right now $25-30 million. And the unpopular take here that I'll throw out there, and I emotionally don't want to say it, but the facts of the situation are we're better off without Davante Adams. Now everybody, we're watching the Netflix thing. We're seeing his comments on the sidelines, and we're kind of reaching out like, come back, Davante, come back. I would love Davante the man back, right? But Davante the paycheck and Davante the aging receiver, I'm good, right? Like, you've got a young receiver core who's very cheap and very, very capable. I mean, number 13 might be the next coming of number 17. So as far as even skill sets go, I don't like, you just don't need him back. You're better off without having paid him. And you don't, T. Higgins was another one. Everybody wanted to go out and pay him. No. You're so much better off where you are right now, and you have it this season and next season, guaranteed, again, short of injuries. But, yeah, so that's – okay, now I can wrap my piece there on the receivers and maybe some of the external rumors of the room. But, no, any thoughts there, Tim? Any disagreement?
Not really. I mean, the whole Davante thing, I guess, blew up this last week or so because of – whatever, he's done interviews and the Netflix thing has gone out there. And I think a lot of it's revisionist history from him. I mean,
it's hard not to.
Right.
Yeah,
but I mean,
what he envisioned totally blew up in his face.
Right. His reason for wanting out was he wanted to be closer to home and closer to his family, and he wanted to play with his college buddy. Okay. Well, you're closer to home. You got your college buddy stunk, and they got rid of him after a year. And the
right, wrong, or indifferent, it happened.
Right. And they give you Jimmy Garoppolo, and now it's Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. Like, he got paid. He got the money that Green Bay wouldn't give him. Now, I know he came out on whatever it was, a podcast or an interview, and said that they kind of lowballed him with the initial offer, going back to when all this started with him before he went into his last year at the Packers. And I kind of believe some of that. Like,
that's how they've treated guys.
It's a negotiation too. Like, they're not going to come out and say, yeah, we'll pay you top of the market. Here's your contract.
Exactly.
It's going to build up to that. And I think, like, okay, maybe he got hurt feelings that the initial first offer was low. I understand that from Davante Adams' side. But eventually they were going to get to a higher price for him, which is maybe where they would have had an agreement. But I guess it took too long to get to that price, and his feelings were already set, and he decided he wanted to move on. And I'm sure they never got to the price that the Raiders got to. Fine, he chased the money.
Yeah.
And no, I have no problem with that. He wanted to be the highest paid guy. Good for him. But I think also part of that was out when the trade was made was he didn't know how much longer Rodgers was going to be there, and he was unsure of Jordan Love. And now he sees how good Jordan Love is, and it's like, well, forget about that. I'm going to blame it all on the Packers front office. And it's like, no, there's a lot more that went on there. So
yeah,
it's, for me, they moved on. I've moved on. I wish Davante well, have a nice season, but it's over. Like, there's no reason to go back and rehash it. The Packers won the trade, and it's not even close. And I don't think, I would love to still have him in Green Bay. I would have loved to have had him the last couple of years just because he's a great player. He's a Packer Hall of Famer. He's still one of the best receivers in football. But now and going forward, if they still had him, a couple of these receivers on the roster wouldn't have been drafted. They just
right
in. And it's a different room. I'd rather roll with what they have. Davante's in the past. Wish him luck. The Packers are better for it. Davante's not. He went to a situation that didn't work out for him, obviously. He's getting paid. Maybe it turns around for him. Maybe he ends up going to play with the Jets or whoever. But, he's not coming back to Green Bay, and that's fine. So just move on. We'll see you when you come back and get inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, exactly. And Matthew Tan hits it. He says, Davante, retire as a Packer, please. Yeah, and I think he will, right? I think he'll get the token final contract. Maybe there'll even be a playable season there where he's receiver 5, kind of an honorary coach on the field. But yeah, it's over. And Clint Stoner, he nails it. It's over.
It's over.
And again, the emotional Packer fan me, yeah, I love Davante Adams, man. I wish he was still a Packer. That side of me, hell yeah. But, we got to put our heads on, right? We got to use our brains a little bit. It just doesn't make sense anymore. It is. It's over, and that's okay. We can be okay with that. It is too bad that it happened the way that it happened. I think we all collectively sort of were like, dang, Davante, wish you would have done it differently. Yeah. I think part of him feels that way, but I think part of him also doesn't regret it, and he's stated that, for family reasons. So I'm like, I get that, man. He made the best decision he could at the time, and turns out to be a right decision or not. You got to live with what you decided. And so, anyway, we won't waste any more time on non-Packers players, right? This is the Packers training camp preview for the offense. But yeah, to just sort of take that all into a ball and toss it out. We don't need any outside help at receiver right now. Hopefully injuries have nothing to say about that, and these guys stay healthy all season, and you are 6 receivers deep on this team. That's what we're hoping for. But then we've also already teased it a little bit and talked about it a little bit. The tight ends, man. You are tight end 1 and tight end 1B. You've got potentially one of the best tight end tandems in the league. And then the tight end 3 position, who cares? Well, I don't care at this point. That's been sort of a weird position that we've all sort of actually paid attention to, maybe more so than we should. I think that is A.J. Dillon's ticket to stay on the team. Have him take those DeGuara snaps and then leave the rest of it up to Tucker and Musgrave and let it be that, right? And that's how you justify keeping A.J. Dillon. He's a big dude. He can do that fullback, that F-back type stuff. He blocks. And, so you can keep him on the team for that. And you can also probably fill that position pretty well, maybe better than you did with DeGuara. But, man, tight end 1, tight end 1B, if they stay healthy, I can't wait to see what LaFleur and company does with those guys. Because when you are afraid of the speed, not the size, the speed from tight end 1, because let's not forget, almost this time last year, right? We're almost to training camp. But training camp last year, Luke Musgrave, by GPS, was showing to be one of the fastest players on the field. Yeah. That is terrifying for a defense. That is terrifying. Because you not only have to worry about all the receivers we got, because we got some speed, right? You got Christian Watson out there really scaring the crap out of us. You got Bo Melton. Jaden Reed's not slow. Dobbs not slow. None of them are slow. And yet Musgrave is running right there with all of them, maybe at the front of the pack. And he's 6'5" and can get up. Let's hope he learned how to keep his feet underneath him. But yeah, I don't know how you don't get really jacked about this position for the Packers, and what I guess, again, this is the training camp preview, so this isn't just like, let's talk about how excited we are about the position. What do we expect out of them in training camp? We're going to get to see how they're going to be used. Like, what do you do when you've got two legitimate receiving threats at tight end? Where are they in the formation? What are you asking them to do? Are they running down the field? How much are they blocking? What are they doing? That's what I'm most excited about with the tight ends, is how are they leveraging these guys? Because these guys are really an X factor after the other weapons are accounted for. So that's my biggest thing that I'm watching for.
Yeah, and just to talk about the two tight ends, like Kraft's more the inline blocking guy, like on the line of scrimmage, whereas Musgrave's more of a slot. But they both have the capability to do everything, to line up all over, and that's what makes it kind of scary, is because we haven't seen guys like that in Green Bay recently. I mean, like what we had with Tunyon and Big Dog. Like Big Dog was he was a blocking tight end. Like you knew where to find him. He wasn't lining up in the slot or out wide. Tunyon, they moved around a little bit, but they can move Musgrave all over the formation. Kraft too, maybe not to the extent that Musgrave does it, but Kraft can do everything. He can run block, he can catch the ball. He improved a lot last season, and I'm just interested. I know he's coming off an injury here in the offseason, so we'll see when he gets back to training camp. But yeah, I mean, when they put those two guys out there, they can move them around. They can put them in different spots. 12 personnel is going to be pretty damn exciting. I mean,
it's going to be a lot of fun.
And it goes back to the point, like with all these receivers, you got to get all these receivers on the field, and now you got two tight ends, so you're going to want to play 12 personnel a lot. Mm-hmm. Like the choices and the different personnel groupings that LaFleur is going to have, it's endless, really, as long as they're all out there healthy and available. I loved Kraft and Musgrave. We started our podcast with Musgrave Mania.
That's right.
I think we might have to do a Musgrave Mania part 2, because I think it might be coming again this year. Let's hope so. I think he was getting close, and then he got the unfortunate injury.
Yeah.
But yeah, those guys, it's been a long time since, going back to a healthy Jermichael Finley, since they had tight ends like this in Green Bay.
Yeah, and even then, you say a healthy Jermichael Finley. That was kind of a rare thing as well. Not picking on Finley.
No.
It just, it is what it is. But, the flash that you probably have that might be even close to similar would be when you had Corliss and Finley on the field at the same time. But Corliss was a rookie, right? When they were in the Super Bowl and he had that one kind of pass with, being with Jermichael Finley, it wasn't the same. You didn't look at Andrew Corliss like he can do tight end one things. It was just like, hey, this guy's kind of athletic. You can maybe do some things with him. And he was all right. Like, he was serviceable.
Yeah. These guys are
different level. Like, they're both tight end one.
Yeah, that's what their potential is. They're both tight end one. And, I mean, it's been since Finley that we had one tight end one, and now we may be talking about two of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a home run for both of them so far in the draft. I know it's one season. We got to see a lot of growth out of both of them, but wow, I'm so excited to see what they do with those guys this year.
I can't remember, but anyway,
Gotcha.
That's when you've got your two tight ends on the field with one running back in the backfield. What's exciting about that is usually in that package, you're going to have your tight ends close to the line, right? In that situation, it's more run than not, it's a bigger package. I think it's 2 receivers outside, not 3. Anyway, typical defense is going to prepare for that situation, expecting the tight ends to be on the line, right? Like right there next to the tackles, essentially. Maybe flex, one of them is flexed in the slot, right? What you can do with the Packers having what they have, you can take Musgrave out and line him up out wide, and he's just as dangerous out there. You can keep Kraft in tight, or you can flex him into a slot position, and you can go from 2 wide to 4 wide without changing personnel. That is a problem for defenses. That's a real problem. So when we're saying we're excited about what you could do, you can give defenses a lot of different looks without changing your personnel, which keeps the defense's personnel on the field. So if you come out in 12 personnel with both tight ends on the line looking like you're going to run the ball, and they keep a heavier package in, you can then go no huddle. You can flex your guys out wide and say, hey, I got you on a heavy package. Now we're going to run this thing deep, and you cannot cover it. You don't have the speed on the field to do it. That's what you can do. That's probably what LaFleur is salivating about, and you can do that in a combination of ways. You could have, there's all sorts. I'm not going to get it all. We need like a whiteboard back here. But that's what's exciting about that is, typically, and what we've had recently with the Packers, you mentioned Big Dog and Tunyon, you got specialized guys. If Big Dog's in there, you're running the ball, man. Like they know that. Big Dog wasn't a huge threat to catch the ball. That's why it was so exciting when he did. Tunyon, he snuck around because he wasn't deemed a threat, right? So every now and then he popped out in a blown coverage and was able to take advantage of mistakes by the defense, but he wasn't a threatening tight end. He wasn't a guy that you're game planning around. And you can keep going back before that, and I can't think right now. I remember Rich Rogers and some of the others, but yeah. You just haven't had this skill set at the tight end position, not as far as I can remember. And so that's what makes this so exciting is the different possibilities there, how you can exploit a defense. And when we're talking about these, way too early previews we've been doing, that's what we're looking at. So you're like, dang, man, you might come up against a tough defense, but you have so much ability to adapt and take advantage of a defense's weakness, whatever it may be, that you shouldn't get shut down. I guess we'll say that. I shouldn't say you won't struggle. You'll struggle, but the offense shouldn't get shut down by anybody at this point.
They shouldn't. Nope. There's a lot of weapons, a lot of potential, and as long as they're healthy, nobody should be shutting them down. The struggles will come. Every team goes through them at some point during the season.
Humans make mistakes, man. That happens.
Exactly. But this is not an offense that should be shut down or going through multiple weeks where they can't score points.
No.
And if they are, there's some kind of bigger picture issue going on. But no, the possibilities for personnel and how they use them are endless. And I'm sure LaFleur he can't wait to use these guys in all different types of ways, formations, where he's going to line everybody up. It's going to be fun to see and fun to track throughout the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about it. That we'll get those first glimpses early on in camp. Where are these guys lining up? What are they asking them to do? All of that. It is exciting. And then, I don't even think we need to do an analysis of the QB position, guys. Jordan Love is good at football. He's about to get paid a lot of money because he's good at football. And hopefully we're going to have a lot of fun watching him be very good at football. Behind that, you got a couple of guys at QB 2 and 3 that are duking it out. It could be some high-quality quarterback play in the preseason, I think. But that's it. There's really not anything else to analyze. We don't need to talk about who's going to win QB2. It'll be the best guy for the job, whether that's Clifford or the rookie. I can't remember his name at this point, Pratt. It doesn't really matter. I trust them to make the right decision there. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter.
It'll be fun to watch in the preseason. It'll give us something, as those games get in the second half to really break down Clifford and Pratt and see what they're like. But we'll have plenty of time to discuss that coming off the preseason games.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's really not a whole lot to analyze about the quarterback position for the training camp preview and the offense, guys. Strap in, enjoy watching Jordan Love play football. It's going to be fun.
Yes.
And And that leaves the O-line, right? So the O-line might be the biggest question mark. I guess it is probably the biggest question mark on the offense going into training camp. And my thoughts on that are the Packers over the offseason improved their best five. I don't know who their best five is going to be. We know who some of them are going to be. But their best five is better now than it was at the end of last season. That's my thought. I think Morgan doesn't have to start right away. He does not have to be in your best five day one for that to be a good pick. Or for the offensive line to be a success. But I do think the competition that they've brought in, including the other rookie lineman, I'm trying to remember his name, the one out of Duke.
Jacob Monk.
Monk.
Yeah.
I honestly think Monk might have more of an impact earlier than Morgan, just out of positional value. I think there's more opportunity for him at right guard or center to outright win a job. I think Morgan, if he's going to win a tackle job, he's got his work cut out for him. The guys we got there, obviously Zach Tom is not giving up a position battle anytime soon, and I don't know that Rasheed Walker is either. So I think the competition there that Morgan brings is a net positive. It's good for all. It's good for him. It's good for the guys he's competing with. Monk, I think, has a chance to be in that best five probably from day one, or day one being regular season game one. Yeah. But other than that, who lands where, your guess is as good as mine. It seems interesting how they've approached the offseason. They don't seem too committed to anybody anywhere. Is that a good read?
Yeah, they seem to be moving guys around a lot, and particularly Jordan Morgan. He played 4 positions. That's a lot coming right out of college, first time in the NFL. So, yeah, I think early in camp we'll probably see them continue to move people around until they figure out what their best position or two are, and then as it goes on preseason, they start settling guys in the 1 or 2 spots. To your point, I think with the draft and the 3 guys that they picked, the depth is better. The competition is better than where it was probably at the end of last season. And I think you can say Elton Jenkins is going to be a left guard. I'd be surprised at this point if they move him. I think whenever Zach Tom comes back from his injury, whether that's beginning of camp or at some point during camp, I think he's going to end up being the right tackle. I know there's a possibility they could move him to center, but I just think he was too good at right tackle. Don't mess with that. And, Rasheed Walker was really good down the stretch last season from, December on. He was pretty consistent for them, had a good offseason. Even though they took a tackle in the first round, he didn't let that affect him. He's going to be really tough to beat out. I don't expect Jordan Morgan to start, game one. And let's not freak out about that. The Packers make these picks, they're investments in the future. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there are times they pick a rookie and they start from day one, but there are plenty of times where they pick a rookie and they don't play right away, where they gradually ramp up during the season. We saw it last year with Van Ness. We've seen it from Rashawn Gary.
Jordan Love.
Yeah, Jordan Love sat for 3 years. They're not looking at this hey, we're taking this guy, he has to start from day one or else. They had guys that could play tackle on, Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom. So they knew they didn't need a day one starter, but they liked them enough because they see the potential in him, whether it's game one in 2024 or whether it's down the line at some point. So let Jordan Morgan settle in and let's not judge him for day one. But having said that, yeah, I think we all want to replace Josh Myers, except for the coaches. They seem to like him a lot more than the public does. And I think he's going to be really tough to unseed. I think he'll have competition, but I don't know if it's legit competition. I think it'll be yeah, we're going to get some guys some snaps there, but I don't know if it's a true competition what we're probably going to see at right guard and maybe at left tackle. So I expect Josh Myers, Elton Jenkins, Zach Tom will be 3 of the starters, and I think Walker's going to be tough to beat out. And it's kind of put up or shut up time for Sean Ryan at right guard. This is his chance. Yeah. But he's going to have competition. So your guy, who you mentioned, Monk, I like him too, coming out of Duke, and I think he's got I agree with you. I think he's got a better chance to play early than Jordan Morgan might. So it's going to be interesting where they where they put these guys, because we know how they like to train them in different spots. They, you can't just play one position if you're a Packer offensive lineman, unless you're Josh Myers. And I'm not saying that as a shot at him. That wasn't a shot. It really was. He's a center, which is fine.
That's fair.
He's
a big
the only right, and he's the only one that they let stay at one spot. So I think it'll be interesting how it shakes out as far as not only the starters, but like who's going to be. Something happens, or somebody's performance is poor. Like who's your next guys up to coming in? What type of flexibility they have. So. Yeah, that's the position where there's a lot of unknown on offense going into training camp.
Yeah, and I honestly think the reason that they won't commit to anything and they keep doing the best five, I think it's a good approach personally, but I don't think they're trying to project who will win what job, right? I think what they're trying to do is be a little bit more reactionary to things, like, and it could be good and bad, right? So if, like you're saying, we've got all these position battles going on. One thing that is kind of a variable is Zach Tom could be a great center, right? Everybody thinks maybe he could be a Hall of Fame center. Okay, well, if Jordan Morgan comes in and thrusts himself into the best five just because he is one of the best five, he's just having an outstanding camp, and you got to have him in your best five. And, Rasheed Walker, same thing. Well, now it's like, well, all these guys. Okay, well, let's, Morgan, Walker at tackle. Let's push Tom in at center. I think that's where it's like, if this happens, then that happens. Or,
right.
Let's say that that's not the case, right? Let's say, all right, well, Tom just hasn't. He's got that right tackle spot locked down. Walker got that spot locked down. Jordan Morgan still learning. Doesn't, he's not necessarily forcing you to play him yet. Monk comes along and is just kicking ass and taking names. But that's just one guy, right? He's kicking ass and taking names at right guard. So then you're kind of stuck with Myers again, right? It's like there's ways for this to work out differently, I think, based on who rises to the occasion and who doesn't. And I think that what the coaches and GM, what they're trying to do is just make sure, again, you get the best five out there. Sure. And what I see is them giving themselves the best chance to get that, right? Because you've got guys, like you're saying, guys that can play all over the line. If you're really good here, great. And you can also be really good over here. So whichever spot has the least amount of talent available at it, we're going to put you there, and then we'll figure out the next one. So it's good to have that. You want that flexibility. I think that personally, as a fan, I like that approach more than, say, like what the Cowboys have done with their offensive line. We pick on the Cowboys a lot, but they've done a really good job of building offensive line. Yeah, they've done a great job of building offensive line, but the guys they get, like, that's the position they play, right? Like, they get a tackle, they get a guard, they get a center, and these guys aren't really interchangeable. They've done that. They can do that, but that's not the way the Cowboys have designed their line to be. Right.
Yeah. And I think the Packers, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but they may be the only team that does it to this extent with the flexibility and moving so many guys around. I know
it might be.
Probably every team has a couple guys that they move around. This guy can play center, he can play guard, or he can play guard. But like Packers do it with basically everybody on their offensive line. Like, you have to play a different position. And I think it was something that started on McCarthy, but it's a whole different level since Matt LaFleur's been there. And it's really turned into their philosophy. Like, this best five, like, it's kind of coach speak, but they do stick with it too. And everybody, plays different. Like, you have to have that flexibility. And I think part of that's just, it's a long season. Like, you're going to have injuries. You're going to have guys maybe underperforming. Like, so you can't just say, well, we lost our right guard. Like, now what do we do?
Exactly.
Like, now you want to put somebody there who's played that position, who's trained at that position. So that's why they're doing it. And it might not make a whole lot of sense in training camp, but October comes, somebody may be injured, and all of a sudden you're sliding somebody in and you don't see much of a drop off because he has that experience at the position.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I do kind of, and I'm not saying that this is exactly when this happened, but I do remember when, it was earlier, I think, in McCarthy's era, and I believe it was because they had a ton of injuries on the O-line where they were like, look, we need guys that can play all these positions, because injuries are going to happen. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that that's where you get them taking a flyer on a guy like Dillard, right? Everybody looks at that like, oh, why'd they do that? Well, your philosophy is different from other teams, so maybe this guy isn't just like a left tackle or a right tackle, but he's a pretty damn good athlete. So it makes sense to bring a guy like that in. At the very least, he's competing, right, and pushing the other guys. But you might discover that the guy can play guard, and nobody else even gave him the time of day to see if he could. I don't know. I haven't looked that much into Dillard's past, but that seems to me to be a good explanation for, why they would take a flyer on a guy like that, and they've done that with several others, in the past few years too. So, yeah, I think the offensive line is a super interesting spot on this team right now. I'm not worried about it. I can't say that I'm best five that they come up with. I think will be a pretty damn good offensive line. If one person on that best five is injured, I don't think that's the end of the season. So I think that's a good place to be. Right? Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with you. I think it has the potential to be a really solid unit, one of the better offensive line units in the NFL. A lot it's got to come together, and there are some questions right now.
Certainly.
But, I mean, Zach Tom, Elton Jenkins, those are top-level offensive linemen. And then Rasheed Walker played really nice down the stretch and showed that he can be a starting left tackle in the NFL. So that's pretty damn good to start with right there. So, yeah, there's questions on the offensive line. We got to see how it shakes out, but I wouldn't say I'm, scared to death of it. It's not one of those positions where geez, what are they going to do? I think they have options. It's just you got to see how those options develop.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that they've got the right guys to do it. Stinovich, I've been critical of him last season, but he's a hell of an offensive line coach. No doubt about that. And he's still in the room. He may not be the offensive line coach, but you can't tell me he's not helping. That would almost be irresponsible of the offensive coordinator. But anyway, so there, that kind of I think is a good wrap up on our training camp preview for the offense. So, there we are. Maybe that right there kind of marks the end of our off season, because the next season anymore, that we are in training camp and things have taken off. So let's do this. Let's do a couple of our way too early analysis on these games coming up this season. We are now in week 14, I want to say, something like that, maybe week 13. Anyway, you guys will be able to figure it out. Correct me in the comments if you can. At the Seahawks, whatever week that comes up. Going to Seattle, taking on that team out there. You know what? I don't know what to think of Seattle anymore. They don't have the identity that they used to. It's like Geno Smith is he's kind of resurrected his career, but it's is he really that guy? I don't know. Is their defense scary anymore? It's they still got some good players, but I don't know how scary their defense is. And this is just a loose perception of mine based on not looking at any depth chart at all for the Seahawks. But I don't know. What do you make of this game?
I think what you said is great analysis. Their identity, their identity is completely changed. They've fallen off. I mean, they're still, a playoff team or a bubble playoff team every year, but
right,
they're not what they were. Pete Carroll's now gone. They were always a defensive team, and their defense has fallen off the last couple of years. Yeah. So now they bring in, new, much younger head coach than what Pete Carroll was. So you kind of don't know what they're going to be. They're going to change a lot. We got to see what the new identity is going to be, and how they're going to use their personnel and defense. But yeah, they're a team that's a lot different. I mean, they were Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll and the Legion of Boom, and those days are now long gone. So it's building it back up. And Geno Smith has impressed me the last couple of years, but he's not one of those upper echelon quarterbacks that you fear, but he is one of those guys that can have a game where he throws for 350 and 3 touchdowns and lights it up. I think and this game being so far out, it's a long way to really preview them because they're such an unknown at this point. But they still have some talented players on both sides of the roster. Going to Seattle, as Packer fans, we know it's not easy to play out there. Road game in Seattle. I believe that's a Monday nighter too, so even tougher. That's a tough game, no matter what their identity is going to be. I don't think they're a team that's going to be, a 3 or 4 win team that's just playing out the string by the time we get there in December. I expect them to kind of be mediocre, on the bubble of just missing out or just barely making the playoffs and losing in the wild card round sort of team. But they have talent. Geno Smith's a decent quarterback. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf are still there. The former Packer draft crush of Jackson Smith and Jigba's there.
Yep.
Yeah. And then some talented players on defense. Devon Witherspoon, the corner, was really good as a rookie.
Yep.
Stud corner. And, they have some players there. Jerron Reed, the former Packer, on the defensive line. So, yeah, they're definitely an unknown team. Like we knew what to expect for so many years with the Seattle, but it's changed so much. It'll be interesting what they look like and what kind of identity they take on. But that's not an easy game, no matter the situation, to go out there, road game Monday night.
Well, and if you have to point out a weakness of LaFleur, it's traveling to the West Coast. He has not done well doing that. Just based on PFF here, again, if you're just now listening to this podcast for the first time, we do lean on PFF a little bit for some objective measures, but we don't put all the weight in the world on it. You take these things with a grain of salt. But looking at their depth chart, and based on grades from last season, if I had to point out some weaknesses of this team, it would probably be safety and offensive line. O-line, across the board, really the only one who graded above a 60 was their left tackle. All the others graded 55 or below, which is not good. And then at safety, one of your safeties graded at 34, the other one's graded at 60. It's just not good. So they definitely have a couple of weaknesses there, and this is one of those teams you got to see what they come out as. Like, for example, their linebacker Dodson last year graded out as the top overall linebacker in the NFL at 90.2. But before that, he never had a high grade. He had a 52, a 58, a 48, and then boom, he's got a 90. So, is he a good player? Is it more of a? We've seen that happen with Devondre Campbell. I don't want to bring that up. I don't know. I'll say this: I'm not afraid of this team. This team doesn't strike fear in me. I think this is more of an opportunity, for the Packers to screw up, to lose this game. Again, you're human. You got to go to the West Coast. LaFleur hasn't done well with that for whatever reason it is. But yeah, I mean, again, after we've talked about the offense and the defense the last couple weeks. And Clint Stoner jumping here. Is there any team the Packers can't beat? I don't know, man. My bias is not going to let me answer that question very fairly. I don't think so. But, going to the Seahawks, yeah, you could lose that game. You could lose any one of these games based on human things. But you've got the team that can go there and win that game. You've got the team that can go there and beat Geno Smith. You got the team that can go there and beat up on some bad safeties with your tight ends and your receivers that you got. So, yeah, I look at this as a game like, hey, I don't know at this point in the season. The Seahawks and the Packers are both going to be different teams than they were in week one. And who's good at what? What are their philosophies? What players have risen up that we haven't seen before? That's going to happen for some of these teams. So there's just a lot of unknowns. But the way we look at it from right now, obviously we're calling this a way too early analysis. I would say that this is should be a win for the Packers. You should win this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it could be one of those games where they got to win it ugly. And it's one of those,
I could see that
dogfight kind of games, four quarters. But yeah, it's a game that if I was, marking it down on my schedule, I'd be putting a W next to that. That's one they should win.
Yeah, like if you're doing your weekly pick'em pool and you're not
Yeah.
doing any research, you're just going through. I think I'm taking the Packers over the
Yeah,
Seahawks in this
I think so too.
Okay, so we'll see how that one develops, and then we'll jump on over to this next week. This, I believe, is the one you were thinking of, Tim. This is Monday Night Football versus the Saints at Lambeau Field. Now, the Seahawks game might be a primetime game, though, because I believe, isn't there a stretch of like 4 straight primetime games?
Maybe they were maybe they were Sunday night. And,
that might be it.
Regardless.
Either way, yeah. So, then you got the Saints at Lambeau. So after you come back from Seattle, the Saints are another one. They don't have a real defined identity. That doesn't mean they don't have talent. They've obviously got some talent, but I just don't know who they are. Are they going to be a passing team? Are they going to, continue to be the New Orleans Chimeras? What are they going to be on offense? I know they've got some talent on defense. I just don't know. I don't know what to expect from this team, but historically, the Saints play pretty good in New Orleans. They don't play as good on the road. The Packers play better at home. I'd lean towards the Packers, at Lambeau on Monday night. But if we need to get an analysis of this, let's get technical. Let's take a look at the Saints depth chart and the guys that they're bringing to the table. Again, we'll look at the PFF grades and use that for what it's worth. You've obviously got Derek Carr down there. We've already talked about him moving on from Davante Adams, unfortunately for them. But yeah, this is another one. Their roster looks similar to the Seahawks. You've got some talent, no doubt about that. You've got some holes, no doubt about that. How much can your talent carry you? I don't know, man. Again, my bias makes me think the Packers are going, 19-0 or whatever it is. But this is another team that doesn't necessarily strike fear in me. Kamara's a beast. You got to stop him. Can Derek Carr beat you with a halfway decent O-line and, some fair weapons? I don't think so. And is the defense tough enough to hang with the weapons that you've got? I don't know. They're not bad. You got Tyrann Mathieu still back there. Lattimore out there. They're not bad, but you just have so much ability to adapt. I don't see this defense as being one that's going to shut you down.
Well, I'll just remember we got them last year at Lambeau, and it was 17-0 Saints going into the fourth quarter. That was the crazy route. I mean, they couldn't do anything offensively, and then all of a sudden, Jordan Love came alive and they pulled it out. So, we could see that Saints team. It could be, another, gritty kind of game that they have to win, but they just strike me, the Saints, kind of like Seattle, like somewhere between 6, 7, 8 win team. Probably their division's not real tough. They can probably hang around at least for a little while, but they're not a contender to go far in the playoffs if they even make it. It's not a game that scares me at all. It's going to be in December, Monday night, Green Bay. That should be a win. As we look at it right now, it should definitely be a win. Chris Olave is a good receiver for him. I think Alvin Kamara is kind of hanging on by a thread at this point. Derek Carr is what Derek Carr has always been, which is he's a league average quarterback. He'll have his few games a year where he plays really well, and he'll have other games where he's terrible and he throws 3 picks, and that's kind of what he is. He's average. And I think the defense is tough. They always seem to, at least the last few years, they seem to have at least a tough competitive defense. But it's not a team that's real exciting. It's, this isn't the Drew Brees light up the scoreboard offense that they used to have. This is kind of like a boring team that's, irrelevant, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Just don't have an identity.
Right. There's no identity. There's no excitement with that team.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, they get them in December, that late in the season. Maybe they're still in the race, but I think they're just as likely to just be playing out the string at that point. So, yeah, it sets up favorably for the Packers.
Yeah, I think so too. And then the next ones we've got at the Vikings and then at home versus the Bears. Listen, guys, the Packers are better than the Vikings and the Bears still suck. So there's your analysis for that one. We already covered both of those, and nothing has changed about them because the season hasn't started yet. So we don't need to do a way too early analysis on those last two games there. But, I do think that the Packers will win both of them just because I'm incredibly biased. And the Packers are going to win the Super Bowl this season. So why not end your season crushing the Vikings, crushing the Bears, reminding the Bears that they still suck and they still can't find a quarterback. Just beautiful ending to a fairy tale season. But yeah, so that's I guess that's a wrap on our off season. Of the 2024 off season for the Packers Weekly podcast. And Clint Stoner agrees with us. We got a fellow homer bias here. I feel the Pack has a potential to beat all the teams. That's right, man. That's it is. It's what's exciting about this. They do. Now, that's why you got to play the game, right? Even the 2007 Patriots lost to Eli Manning in the Super Bowl. So nothing's a given. We know that. But it's excuse me if I can't hide my excitement. I think if you're a fan, it's sort of your job at this point to be excited about your team. Going into it is one thing. You got to play the games. I can't remember a time going into the season where you just look across the positions and you're just that excited about all of them. This is not to say that this team is better than any of the previous Super Bowl winning Packers teams. It's just a very exciting way to start the season, so enjoy Absolutely. It. We should be happy about it. There's no major injuries. There's no major drama. There's just, it's all good, right? All arrows are pointing upward. So let training camp begin.
Hell yeah. Let's begin.
Hell
Bring
yeah,
it on, man. Off season's over. Let's get the when we talk next week, we'll be able to talk about actual real practice.
So Super Bowl or bust then, right, Tim?
Super Bowl or bust? Why not?
Yes! We got him to say it. Super Bowl or bust. Tim agrees. Next week, anybody else who's no longer or who's still holding out, I challenge you to not say Super Bowl or bust right now. So that said, thank y'all for hanging out with us tonight on the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. If y'all would, please spike that like button for us if you enjoyed this episode. Give us a follow on all of the socials and definitely subscribe to that Packers Talk YouTube channel. All those things help us out tremendously. We really appreciate it. And we will see y'all for the beginning of training camp next week, Packers fans. Go Pack!